The dinner invitation. It started with a dinner invitation Keanu didn't want. He had just wrapped a quiet day on set. No action scenes, no makeup, just quiet dialogue in a small independent film one. He had agreed to for the story, not the paycheck. He preferred days like that. No noise, no spotlight, just the work. As he walked out of the small studio lot, his assistant, Jules, caught up to him with a folded card in hand. "They want you at the Madison estate tonight," she said. Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Who's they?" "Miranda Madison, the art collector, billionaire widow, owns half of Sunset Hills." He stopped walking. "Why would she invite me?" Jules hesitated. "She's throwing a charity dinner. Celebrities, politicians, musicians, CEOs. You're on the list." And they called 3 times. Keanu looked down at the ground. "You know I hate those kinds of events." "I know," Jules said softly. "But she's funding 3 orphanage renovations in the Philippines. Maybe this one's worth it." Keanu paused, then nodded. "Fine, just for the kids." The Madison estate was exactly what Keanu expected and everything he quietly disliked. It was a castle pretending to be a house. Crystal chandeliers that stretched across entire ceilings. Golden staircases that spiraled like they led to heaven. Expensive art pieces that didn't move the soul, only shouted their price tags. And people. Too many people. Men in tuxedos trying too hard to sound important. Women in dresses that cost more than most people's cars. The kind of crowd that didn't ask questions, they assumed answers. Keanu entered quietly, no fanfare. He didn't like attention, and yet, the moment he stepped in, eyes turned, whispers floated, phones were raised. A hostess led him to his table, a round corner seat near the back of the main ballroom. He was glad for that. Until he saw who was already seated. Miranda Madison herself. She wore a black satin gown, her silver hair coiled perfectly above her head, diamonds like frost around her neck. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice smooth but sharp. "What an honor. I didn't think you'd show." "I wasn't planning to," Keanu replied gently. "But then I heard about the orphanage work." "Ah yes," she said with a smirk. "Children, the great emotional currency." Keanu didn't like her tone, but he said nothing. The dinner began. Speeches were made. Auctions were held. People laughed too loudly and clapped too quickly. Keanu stayed quiet, polite, a ghost in the middle of a storm, until dessert was served. That's when Miranda stood. The room hushed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called out, her voice commanding, "before we end this lovely night, I think we need some entertainment. Don't you?" Applause followed. "We've had sopranos, pianists, violinists," she continued. "But what about something different?" She turned slowly toward Keanu. "Mr. Reeves," she said, smiling that same cold smile, "would you honor us with a song?" The room gasped softly. Keanu looked up, confused. "Excuse me? You act, you fight, surely you can sing," she said sweetly, but her words held a mocking edge. A few guests laughed. Someone whispered, "This'll be good." Keanu glanced around. All eyes were on him. He could say no. He wanted to say no. But then, he saw the children's photos on the walls, the ones from the charity posters. Little brown-eyed girls holding worn school books, small boys standing barefoot in the mud. He took a breath, stood up. Walked toward the small stage near the grand piano. The room was silent. He didn't take the microphone. Instead, he turned to the pianist and whispered a few words. The man nodded and began to play a slow, haunting melody. Keanu closed his eyes. And began to sing. His voice was soft at first, low, like a whisper wrapped in velvet. But it carried. It wasn't the voice of a professional singer. Not polished, not rehearsed. But it was raw, real, filled with something no training could create. Soul. He sang a song from his childhood, an old folk tune from Hawaii that his mother used to hum when life was hard. A lullaby meant to calm storms, meant to remind you that no matter how dark the night got, morning would come. The room changed. The laughter stopped. Phones were lowered. Even Miranda Madison froze, because suddenly, they weren't at a luxury dinner. They were in the heart of a man who had lost and loved, who had buried friends, who had walked through fire, but kept his kindness when the final note faded. Silence hung in the air like smoke. Then one clap. Then the whole room stood. Not because of fame, but because they had just witnessed something pure. Miranda Madison clapped too, but her face was unreadable. Keanu bowed his head slightly, returned to his seat, and said nothing more. But the night was far from over, because someone in the room had recorded it. And by morning, the entire world would be watching. And not everyone would clap. The video that broke the silence. Next morning, Keanu Reeves sat alone in his hotel suite. He always rose early. Years of filming before dawn, long motorcycle rides at sunrise, and quiet habits had shaped his mornings. Today, though, felt different. His phone was vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. Messages, notifications, missed calls. He ignored them until Jules called directly. "You're trending," she said the moment he answered. Keanu sighed. "Why?" "The song," she replied. "Someone recorded it last night. It's everywhere, everywhere." He asked. 3 million views. In 6 hours, and climbing. Keanu closed his eyes. He hadn't sung to be famous. He sang because it felt right. He didn't even realize someone had filmed it. "What are people saying?" he asked quietly. Jules hesitated. "Some are stunned. Most are praising it. They say it was raw, real, healing. Even people who never liked you as an actor are crying." But, he said. Miranda Madison gave a statement this morning. She said it was a modest attempt at art and claimed she only encouraged you out of politeness. Keanu exhaled through his nose. Of course she did. Miranda's full statement aired on a morning talk show. Her face calm, her posture perfect. "Keanu Reeves is a good actor," she said. "But let's not mistake vulnerability for talent. Singing is a skill. What we saw last night was an emotional moment, not a musical one." It was said with a smile, but it was clear. She wanted control of the narrative. She wanted the spotlight back. But the public wasn't on her side this time. The video, now titled "Keanu Reeves Sings from the Soul, Listen Closely," reached over 10 million views by noon. Comments flooded in. "This isn't a performance. This is a prayer. He reminded me of my grandfather's lullabies. You can feel every crack in his voice. That's what makes it perfect." Journalists began digging. They found an old clip of Keanu at age 19 singing in a dive bar in Toronto. No instruments, just his voice and an old wooden stool. He was singing the same lullaby, same quiet grief, same depth. The story shifted. People began asking why had no one known this side of him before. Back at the Madison estate, Miranda wasn't pleased. Her assistant entered the parlor, tablet in hand. "We've lost the narrative," she said. Carefully. Miranda's single quotes, lips thinned. "We never should have let him take the stage. He took it because you mocked him," the assistant said under her breath. Miranda shot her a glance. The assistant lowered her eyes. "Book an artist for tomorrow night's benefit," Miranda said coldly. "Someone trained, someone polished, someone who won't tremble when they open their mouth." "Who?" the assistant asked. "Carmen West." Carmen West was everything Miranda loved. Young, technically flawless, a soprano trained in 3 conservatories, more awards than birthdays, no room for emotion, only perfection. The next night, Miranda hosted a second benefit, this time smaller, exclusive, and no Keanu on the guest list. But someone came anyway, not to attend, to deliver something. As guests sipped wine and complimented each other's watches, a delivery man in a hoodie and jeans walked in with a small black box. "Who sent this?" the staff asked. "Anonymous," the man replied, then walked out before anyone could ask further. Miranda opened the box. Inside was a vintage vinyl record. Handwritten on the sleeve, "Music is not always for applause." She didn't recognize the writing, but Keanu did, because he was watching from a distance, not out of revenge. Not to fight, but to remind. That same night, Keanu visited a children's music school in the lower side of Los Angeles. The place had no funding, broken chairs, duct-taped instruments, but laughter filled the halls. He sat with the kids and sang. Not for cameras, not for applause, just for them. A local teacher recorded a short clip, unaware of the buzz already happening online. By morning, that clip too had gone viral. Keanu sitting cross-legged with a child's guitar. His voice rough and warm, the children smiling, clapping offbeat, loving every note. And that's when things changed. An international music foundation reached out. They wanted Keanu to lead a campaign. Not as a singer, but as a voice for musical healing. He refused twice. But on the third call, he said yes. As long as we're helping people who can't afford lessons, he said, especially the ones no one sees. Meanwhile, Miranda made her next move. She called a music critic, someone she trusted. Release the rehearsal clip, she ordered. But he didn't know we were filming. The critic said, exactly. She replied. What followed was a cold, calculated attempt to end the praise. A grainy video was released to the press. Keanu, sitting alone in a dark room before the charity dinner, humming nervously, stumbling over notes, repeating lines quietly. The headline, raw or rehearsed. Keanu's singing moment exposed. Miranda smiled, but the public did not turn, because what they saw was not weakness. They saw honesty. A man trying, a man nervous. A man real. And suddenly, the story evolved again. A journalist tweeted, "This isn't proof of failure, it's proof of courage." Within hours, Keanu was invited to perform at a charity concert for war veterans. He declined. But he sent a song, a recording from his home studio. Just one voice. No instruments. The same lullaby. Dedicated to those who never stop fighting. And at that concert, under a soft spotlight, the song played. Not loud. Not perfect, but unforgettable. Even Miranda Madison, sitting among the crowd in disguise, wiped a tear from her eye. She didn't clap, but she didn't speak either, because for the first time in a long time, she was silent. But something else was brewing. A famous composer had just seen the viral clip, and he wasn't thinking of praise. He was thinking of something much bigger. The composer's letter. The song echoed across the charity concert hall, like a whisper that refused to fade. When it ended, no one moved for several seconds. The silence wasn't awkward, it was sacred. Then the applause began. Not thunderous, not forced. It was quiet, personal, the kind of clapping that comes from a place deep in the chest. And far in the back row, hidden behind a gray scarf and dark sunglasses, sat a man who didn't clap at all. Not because he wasn't moved, but because he was already writing something in his notebook. The man's name was Elliot Greaves. To most people, he was invisible. To those in the world of classical music, he was a legend. The youngest composer to ever win a Lifetime Achievement Award. He had written symphonies for world leaders, operas for royalty, and the music behind four of the biggest films in history. But for the past 6 years, he had vanished. No new scores, no interviews, no concerts. People said he was tired. Others said he'd lost his muse. The truth was, he was listening. He had been searching for a sound that was real, not manufactured, not performed, not sold. And in Keanu's voice, he had found it. Keanu didn't know any of this. He was back in his studio apartment the next morning, feeding a stray cat that had started visiting him. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. He ignored it. It rang again. Finally, he picked up. Double quotes. Reeves, a calm British voice said, "My name is Elliot Greaves. I believe your voice has something the world has forgotten." Keanu paused. "Is this a prank?" "Not at all," Elliot said softly. "I want to compose a piece for you, something we perform together." "Live." Keanu laughed once, gently. "You must have the wrong man." "No," Elliot replied. "I have the right man. Because perfection doesn't move people, honesty does." Keanu didn't respond right away. Then he said, "I'll think about it." Over the next few days, Keanu tried to forget about the call, but the world wouldn't let him. The lullaby had reached radio stations. Cover versions were popping up across social media, from school choirs to blind singers in India. One version featured a child in a cancer ward playing it on a toy piano. It brought the internet to tears. And under every post, people kept writing the same comment: his voice isn't just heard, it's felt. Keanu began to feel the weight of it. Not fame, not pressure. But responsibility. People were listening, and not just with their ears. Finally, he called Elliot back. "I'll do it," he said, "But on one condition." "Name it," Elliot replied. "The performance has to raise money for children's music schools." "All of it." "Done," said Elliot, without hesitation, "and I want it to be raw. No auto-tune. No backup singers. Just us. And silence. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say." Rehearsals began 2 weeks later in an empty theater. Outside Vienna. Elliot brought nothing but a piano, a notebook, and a promise to keep things real. Keanu arrived in his same jeans, boots, and black hoodie. He looked like a roadie, not a performer. And yet, when he sang, even the janitor paused his sweeping. The song they created was new, but it was built on something ancient. Pain, hope, longing. They called it the voice beneath the noise, a single note. Peace, one piano, one voice. No chorus. No flash. Just truth. But not everyone liked the idea. Miranda Madison caught wind of the performance through one of her event scouts. She was furious. "He's not a singer," she hissed. Her assistant cleared her throat. "He's becoming something more than that." Miranda slammed her wine glass down. "Then we remind the world who belongs on stage and who doesn't." That night, she made a call to a famous gossip blogger. The next morning, a new headline appeared: "Keanu Reeves to perform live. Insiders say he's nervous and unprepared." The article mocked his voice, said he only got attention because of pity, suggested the performance would be a disaster dressed as charity. Keanu saw it. He didn't respond. Instead, he went back into the theater with Elliot and rehearsed harder. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove the quiet boy inside him right, the boy who once sat on a sidewalk, singing to himself to stay brave. On the night of the performance, people lined up for blocks. Some came for curiosity. Others for support. But most came to feel something. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the audience, and on stage, without introduction, Keanu Reeves walked into the light. He didn't wear a tuxedo. He wore his truth. Elliot nodded from the piano bench. Then began to play. Soft. Bare. Almost like breathing. And then Keanu sang. His voice cracked on the third line. He closed his eyes and kept going. By the end of the song, people weren't cheering. They were crying. Not from sadness. But from memory. Because his voice pulled things out of them: old losses, forgotten kindness, unspoken dreams. Even Miranda Madison, who had managed to sneak into the balcony wearing dark glasses, sat still and wiped her cheek. Silently. After the last note, Keanu stepped back from the microphone. Bowed once. Then walked off the stage without a single word. And behind him, the crowd stood up, not out of habit, but out of thanks. The performance raised over $7 million in one night and funded music schools in 10 different countries. Afterward, Elliot approached Keanu backstage. "You've done more than perform," he said. "You've reminded us that art is about connection, not perfection." Keanu smiled. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing me." But Elliot wasn't the only one watching. An invitation was waiting in Keanu's hotel room that night. A card, gold-trimmed. From Miranda Madison. With 6 words written by hand: "Join me for dinner. One last time." The second dinerth gold-trimmed card sat on Keanu's hotel desk all day. He looked at it twice. Read the words once. Then ignored it. He had no interest in dining with Miranda Madison again. Not after her cold smirk. Not after the way she tried to humiliate him in front of a room full of strangers. Not after the way she clapped without feeling when he finished the lullaby. But that night, as the city of Vienna glittered under a quiet sky, a soft knock came at his door. It was Jules. She sent a driver, she said. Keanu raised an eyebrow. "And flowers. And a donation receipt." "How much?" he asked. 500,000, Jules replied. "To the children's music program." Keanu didn't speak. "She wants to talk," Jules added softly. Keanu stood at the window for a long time, watching headlights flicker below. He didn't owe Miranda anything, but maybe, just maybe, she owed him something. The Madison estate in Vienna wasn't as flashy as her California property. It was older, colder, made of stone and silence. Keanu arrived without fanfare. A butler opened the door. Miranda stood near the fireplace in a long gray coat, her silver hair loose, falling around her shoulders. She looked smaller without the diamonds. "Mr. "Reeves," she said. "Thank you for coming. You paid for me to come." He replied gently. She smiled faintly. "I paid for your time, not your patience." He stepped into the room. Didn't sit. "What do you want?" "Miranda." She walked slowly to a grand piano at the corner, touched the keys, but didn't play. "When I was a little girl," she began, "I wanted to be a singer." Keanu tilted his head. "My mother was strict, proper. She said music was for maids and poets. I wasn't allowed to dream out loud." She sat down at the piano bench. "So I stopped dreaming and started collecting." "Collecting what?" Keanu asked. She looked up at him. "Control." The fire crackled. "You reminded me what real music sounds like," she said, "and I hated you for it." Keanu didn't move. Miranda's voice trembled slightly. "You sang like someone who didn't care who was watching. You weren't perfect, but you were honest. And I forgot what that felt like." She opened the piano lid slowly. "I haven't played in 30 years. "Then play now," Keanu said. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Here." "Yes," he said, "for yourself." Miranda hesitated. Then placed her fingers on the keys. Soft. Tentative. She played the first few notes of a song she barely remembered. A lullaby her nanny used to hum. Her hands shook. Notes stumbled. But she kept going. Keanu didn't interrupt. When she finished, she looked down. Ashamed. "I'm not like you," she whispered. "I can't sing through pain. I only know how to bury it." Keanu walked over. Sat beside her. "You just did more than most people ever will," he said quietly. "I don't know how to be vulnerable." She said, "I only know how to win." "Then try losing once," he said, "on purpose, and see what it frees." Tears formed in her eyes, and for the first time, they weren't frozen. The next day, something unexpected happened. Miranda Madison published an article. In her own words, the headline read, "How I Mocked Keanu Reeves and Why I Was Wrong." She wrote about shame. About envy. About her fear of looking small, and how Keanu's raw voice reminded her that art is not a mirror, it's a window. People were stunned. The woman known for never apologizing had bowed. And the world listened. Keanu didn't respond publicly. But he made one quiet phone call to a boy named Samir, the one who had played his lullaby on a toy piano from a hospital bed in Jordan. Samir answered with joy in his voice. "Mr. Reeves," he said. "Just Keanu," he replied. "Are you really calling me?" "Yes," Keanu said softly. "And I want to hear you play." The boy fumbled with the phone, then placed it near the small piano. He began to play. Shaky. Off. Beat. Perfect. Keanu closed his eyes and listened. Weeks passed. Miranda began funding music schools anonymously. One in Brazil. One in Gaza. One in India. She never asked for credit. And Keanu never mentioned her name again. But the impact remained, because one night of honesty had done something no performance ever could. It had opened a locked door inside a locked person, and from that crack, light had poured in. But just as the story seemed to find peace, an invitation arrived. Not for Keanu. Not for Miranda. But for both. From the Royal Conservatory of Music in London. They were being asked to perform together. Her on piano. Him on voice. One time, one song. Miranda read the letter with trembling hands. "Do you think they're serious?" she asked Keanu. "Only one way to find out," he said. And smiled. The Royal Stag at the Royal Conservatory of Music in London was a place where only the best performed. Giant halls built from stone and story, velvet curtains, and ceilings that carried every sound like it was sacred. The room where greatness had echoed for over 100 years. People didn't just attend concerts here, they remembered them forever. And now, for one night only, two unlikely names were printed on the program. Keanu Reeves and Miranda Madison. The public was confused. Some were curious, others were critical. But the event sold out in less than 12 minutes. Keanu arrived in London 3 days early. He didn't bring an entourage. No stylists, no agents. Just his assistant Jules, a single suitcase, and his calm, quiet presence. He stayed in a modest hotel room, walked to rehearsals by himself. No sunglasses, no hiding. Miranda arrived the same night. A black car, 2 assistants, and a silk scarf over her face. She wasn't trying to impress anymore. She was trying to stay focused. They hadn't spoken since the dinner in Vienna. Until now. Inside the grand rehearsal room, she sat at the piano bench, her hands resting on the keys. Keanu stood behind the microphone, his hands in his pockets. There was no audience, no pressure. Just two people, one who once mocked music, one who once hid behind silence. "You ready?" he asked gently. She looked up. "I don't know." He smiled. "Me neither." She laughed quietly. "Perfect." They began to rehearse. The song was simple. An original piece written by Elliot Greaves himself. He called it Unwritten. The melody rose slowly, soft and unsure at first, like the beginning of a conversation between two people who had once been enemies. Miranda's fingers danced with hesitation. Keanu's single quotes S voice trembled. But then, something happened. The notes found them. They weren't just playing music. They were telling a story. Hers. His. And everyone's in between. Words spread fast across London. Paparazzi camped outside the conservatory. Journalists speculated. Some said Miranda would freeze. Others said Keanu's voice wouldn't survive such a stage. One tabloid ran a cruel headline, "From Hollywood to high notes, how far can Keanu fall?" Keanu didn't respond. He never did. He rehearsed. Miranda, for once, didn't read the papers. She practiced. Quietly. Earnestly. For the first time in her life, she didn't want to perform to impress. She wanted to feel. And that changed everything. On the night of the concert, the conservatory buzzed with high-profile guests. Musicians, directors, royalty, even a few of Keanu's old co-stars came. The stage was lit in soft amber. To microphones. One grand piano. No orchestra. No backdrops. Just silence waiting to be broken. Miranda walked out first, her silver hair pinned simply. No diamonds. No glamour. Just grace. Keanu followed. He wore a dark gray shirt and black slacks. No tuxedo. No mask. Just truth. The crowd hushed. Miranda placed her fingers on the keys and played the first note. Keanu closed his eyes and sang. No spotlight could outshine what came next, because the song wasn't about hitting high notes or flawless rhythm. It was about forgiveness. Miranda played the middle section with tears in her eyes, not from nerves. But from healing. Keanu's voice cracked during the final verse, and he didn't hide it. He let it crack. He let it hurt. He let it be real. When the final note faded, the silence was longer than usual. No one clapped. Not at first, because no one wanted to break what they had just felt. Then slowly, one person rose. Then another. And another. A standing ovation, not for talent. But for transformation, for bravery, for something that rarely shows itself on stages, like that honest human growth. After the show, backstage was quiet. Miranda sat alone, looking at her hands. "You did it," Keanu said softly. "We did," she replied. "How do you feel?" She looked at him, like I finally stopped being a statue. He nodded. "You were never stone, just frozen." She smiled. "And you? How do you feel?" Keanu thought for a moment. "Like I sang for the boy I used to be." The next morning, newspapers around the world showed the same photo. Keanu and Miranda, hand in hand, bowing together. The headline read, "The performance that silenced the world." But the real magic wasn't in the music. It was in what happened after. Inspired by the event, dozens of artists came forward sharing their own stories of fear, mockery, and redemption. A new movement began. #voice without fear. People recorded themselves singing imperfectly, writing songs. Playing out of tune. And sharing them with the world. Not to be liked. But to be free. Back in Los Angeles, Keanu returned to his quiet life. Motorcycles, script reading, volunteering at music schools. He didn't chase stages anymore, because he had learned that the greatest stage is the space between two people when they choose honesty. Miranda sold one of her estates, donated the entire profit to a global arts scholarship. She never hosted another charity gala. Instead, she joined them quietly, without cameras. She sat on school benches and clapped for 6-year-olds singing off-key, and she never corrected them. But one final twist was still waiting. Months later, Keanu received a small package. No return address. Inside, a cassette tape. And a handwritten note. "You reminded the world how to feel. now reminded how to hope. The final song is yours to write. Keanu smiled, because he already knew what the last song would be. He sat down, picked up a pen, and began. The last song Keanu sat by the window of his quiet home in the Hollywood Hills. The city glowed in the distance, but his world right now was simple, just a notebook, a pen, and a cassette tape that had no label. Only the note. The final song is yours to write. He had read the note 5 times already, held the tape in his hands for 10. He placed it into the old tape deck, pressed play. No music came, just silence. Then softly a piano. A melody he didn't recognize at first. Gentle, curious, like a question. And then a voice, not singing. Just speaking. It was Elliot Greaves. If you're hearing this, then you're ready. This melody has no lyrics, no shape. It's not finished. That's because it belongs to someone who never sought the spotlight but became one anyway. I've written thousands of songs, Keanu, but none as important as the one you're about to finish. Because it won't be heard in halls or broadcast on airwaves. It'll be heard in people, in quiet rooms, in young voices finding courage. Write the final song, not for me, not for the world, but for the child still living inside all of us, the one waiting to be heard. The tape clicked softly. Keanu stared at the wall, then picked up his pen and began to write. The song took 3 days, not because it was hard, but because it was honest. Every line came from a place inside him that had once been locked behind silence, memories of loss, moments of love, of being misunderstood, of walking alone, but choosing never to harden. He called the song When No One Claps. It wasn't a song about fame. It wasn't even a song about music. It was about moments. The ones we carry quietly, the ones that shape us, the ones that still echo when everyone else forgets. He didn't plan to release it. It wasn't written for the charts. But one afternoon, a group of young kids at a music program he supported asked him, "Can you play something just for us? Something no one's heard yet?" He smiled, sat down at a dusty upright piano, in a classroom where the paint peeled and sunlight danced through broken blinds, and he played. The children didn't speak. Some swayed, some cried without knowing why. They didn't understand all the words, but they felt them, deep in the parts of themselves that adults often forget exist. One of the teachers recorded it, not for attention, just for memory. But like most truths, it found its way out. And within a week, that clip spread like fire through a dry forest, not because it was polished, but because it burned with honesty. The final song touched something global. Artists called it a letter to the unheard. Parents played it for their kids. Kids played it for their parents. Prisoners wrote letters about how it gave them peace. Teachers printed the lyrics and hung them on walls. The last verse especially struck something universal. When no one claps, sing louder, still not for the praise, but for the will to remind the world that soft is strong and every silence needs a song. Miranda Madison, now chairing a worldwide foundation for arts in forgotten places, sent Keanu a letter. No email, no text, just a note. You didn't write a song, you wrote a key. And now, doors are opening all over the world. She enclosed a photo, a classroom in Kenya, 12 barefoot children sitting on buckets, singing the chorus. One child was holding a sign, "When no one claps, we still sing." Keanu pinned the photo to his kitchen wall, beside another old picture, his mother smiling, holding a guitar, long before the world knew his name. A few months later, Keanu was invited to speak at a global arts summit in New York. He walked on stage, not with a speech, but with a story. He spoke not of fame, but of fear, not of talent, but of truth. "I was never supposed to be a singer," he said, "and maybe I'm still not. But somewhere along the way, someone tried to mock me and it turned into a moment. That changed everything, because pain, when embraced with grace, becomes power." The crowd didn't cheer loudly. They stood quietly, and that silence was the loudest applause he'd ever known. In the years that followed, Keanu didn't record an album, he didn't tour, he didn't take interviews about his sound. Instead, he funded music schools where no one else did. He taught shy kids how to sing, even if their voices cracked. He showed grown men how to cry when the guitar string broke. And every year on the same date, He sat in front of a small audience of children and played When No One Claps Again, each time slightly different, because like pain, music evolves. And so does healing. On his 65th birthday, Jules asked him, "Do you regret singing that night at Miranda's?" He looked at her and smiled. "Not for a second," he said, "because that was the first time the world really heard me." She nodded. "And now?" He looked out the window at a group of kids laughing near a music stand. "Now I just help others hear themselves in a world chasing perfection." He remained imperfect. In a world shouting for attention, he whispered peace. And in a world that clapped for the loudest, he sang for the quietest and made them believe their voice mattered too.